This video is covering activity 4, that's the structure testing of the paper. What you've got to do is test the structure and the validation of your relational database using suitable test data, that's normal, erroneous and extreme as appropriate. You must provide evidence of table level testing that proves 1. A record for a staff member will not save if the surname is not present. 2. A record for a staff member will not save if the staff start date is not present. 3. A record for a staff member will not save if the telephone number is not in the correct format. 4. A record for a staff member will not save if the number of days they work is below the accepted range. 5. A record for a staff member will not save if the number of days they work is above the accepted range. 6. A record for a staff member will not save if the performance grade is invalid. You need to complete the test log that's provided, that's Activity 4 template, to show how you've tested the structure and validation of your database using the given activity template. Let's just have a quick look at this template before we start filling it in. So this is provided for the exam and it indicates at the top, if you can't remember what N, R and X stand for, N's for normal data, X is extreme data, that's where you range testing, and R is for anything else that's erroneous and will cause an error. We need to make sure that the screen print evidence is included for all tests and that screen prints are readable and referenced to the test. So that means using the same data that you've got in your test. If the actual results column is not wide enough to clearly show the results, you can include them at the end of the table. Make sure you clearly reference those. And then you need to make sure you just carry out the testing that's required in the activity. Don't add any additional tests because that doesn't attract any marks. And you may delete any rows that are not used. Let's just have a look at the column headings. We've got test number, so we'll just number each test consecutively from 1 to however many we need. You need to identify the type of test with an N, R or X. You do actually get marks for that. You need to show the actual test data that you are using and you need to make sure you provide test data for the whole record. In the expected results column, you're going to write down what the computer will do with the data that you're using for this test. And then in the next column, you add the screen prints of those results for this test and plus any additional testing that you might have carried out. Just make sure that the test data used that you've stated is used in the screen prints. Now there's a final column in the test log. You only need to complete this column if the results are not as expected. So you've said using specific data what will happen, but the computer does something different. You need to explain the error if you can, and also, if you can, correct the error, explain how you've done it, and it includes screen prints. If all your testing's gone as expected and you've no discrepancies, you can actually delete this last column from the test plan. The first test we need to carry out then is to test that a record for a staff member will not save if the surname is not present. We have to provide all the data that we're using, so we need to list all the fields in the record and state exactly what we're going to use. So it's quite satisfactory to say staff ref equals auto num, because that will depend how many records you've been putting into your database as to what the staff ref will be. You need to say in this one the surname's left blank because we're testing that the record won't save if the surname's not present. We also need to provide the data that we're using for the work days, the start date, the end date, the telephone number and the grade. And then in the expected result column, so in this case the record will not save and we need to say that an error message will be displayed and what that error message will be saying. So in this case, the surname must be present. So we go to our Access database, we key in this data, and we will get the error message displayed, and that's where we need to take the screen print from. So we take a screen print and drop it into the column. The next test is testing that the start date must be present. So again, we've got to provide all the data for the record, staff ref num, we can put in a surname, put in the work days, leave the start date blank, end date, we can leave that blank anyway, telephone number and grade 3. And again in the expected results column, we're going to say what will happen, the record will not save, and that an error message will be displayed, the start date must be present. So again, take a screen print and drop that into your test log, right, which demonstrates that that start date must be present. The next test is about the telephone number, and it must have the correct number of digits and in the correct format. Difficult one to evidence sometimes an input mask, but this one, if we haven't got the correct number of digits in, it will come up with an error message. So again, all the data in the record that you're using, so staff ref auto number, surname, work days, start date, end date. Just notice we need a start date in there, so let's just add that. So end date can be left blank, telephone number, and it's got a digit missing off the end, and then the grade ID. Again, we're saying the record will not save, an error message will be displayed, the telephone number must have the correct number of digits, be in the correct format. I might add that actually, correct number of digits in the correct format. Again, go to your database, enter all this data, take a screen print, and then drop that into your test log. Next test is about the number of days, and we need to make sure that the number of days worked is not below the accepted range. So again, we need to provide data for the whole record. So we've got the staff ref, the surname, the work days. In this case, we put in 1 because that's going to be below 2. Start date, end date, a full telephone number, and the grade ID. Enter the data into your Access database, take a screenshot, and paste that into your test log. The next test is testing that the work days is not above the accepted range. So again, we've got all the data being used in the record. We've got the staff ref, the surname. This time the work days are 6 because we're trying to demonstrate what will happen if we put in something above 5. We've got a start date, no end date, a full telephone number, and the grade ID. So we're saying the record will not save. An error message will be displayed saying the number of days per week must be between 2 and 5. Go to Access, take a screen print, and then paste that into your test log. Just let me scroll sideways, just show you the whole thing. Just make sure that the examiner can read these images easily and clearly, and it's demonstrating everything in your test. Let's go back. This next test is demonstrating that the record will not save if the grade ID is invalid. Now, if you remember with this, we've set this up as a foreign key in the staff record. So let's put all the details into the staff record. We've got the staff ref, the surname, the work days are now valid, I've put 5. We've got a start date, a blank end date, because that's acceptable, a telephone number, and then the grade ID is going to be 4. And what will happen here, the record will not save, an error message will be displayed because the grade ID must exist in TBL grade, otherwise it's invalid. Again, go to Access, key in this data. Most of it you've got in already, you can just change it, and take a screen print and drop that into your test plan. The last test I've included in my testing is all data which is valid, normal data, to demonstrate that the record will save and no error messages will be displayed because all the data is valid. Again, go to Access, key this data into your staff record or amend it, take an image and drop it into your test plan. You'll notice when I was completing this test log, I haven't actually keyed in the test number and the type of test. I've left those to the end because I find it quicker and easier just literally clicking this test number column and number the tests 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many it is. And also to go through and put the N, R and X against each test. Just a quick reminder, N is normal data, X is data which is outside some extreme limits, so that's when you're doing range testing, and then R is for any other data that is erroneous. So I've gone through now, I've numbered each test, and I've also put the type of test. So test 1 for the surname was an R, erroneous. Test 2 for the start date was R, erroneous. Test 3 for the telephone number was R, erroneous. Test 4 was for the number of days. It must be between 2 and 5, so that's an X, it's extreme. Test 5 again was extreme because it was that number of days per week again, but the top limit. Test 6R was erroneous because the grade ID must exist in TBL grade. Test 7 is N because all the data is normal. Just let me scroll along, just make sure you can see all the images there which support the tests, so the examiner can easily read those and see that the data in the image matches the data in the test. In my case, I didn't complete the final column at all because all my tests worked as expected. But if you get anything coming up that's unexpected, then you need to comment and use screen prints in this final column. Make sure you save your test plan as it states in the activity, and that you save it as a PDF. In the next video, I'm going to be looking at carrying out the evaluation. That's activity 5.